Hello, everyone. All right. So this is now going to be teacher office hours. And so I am here. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and pop them in the chat right here. And then I'll go ahead and answer them for you. And so until the first question. First question. Okay. So right now we're going to be learning a little bit about the AP English course and what you can expect to see when you go there and some strategies that I have for you. If you have additional questions, just start pinging me and then I'll be answering your questions for the next hour. So what can you expect when you go to the AP English exam and you're going to be in multiple choice territory? That's the first part of the exam you're going to be taking. The second part is going to be the essay section. So the first thing to note is there's going to be 3 different things that you're going to see on the multiple choice part of the exam. So the units for your AP course are divided into 9, so 9 total units. And the first, units 1, 4, and 7, that's all short fiction. It is about, I'll say about 42 to 49% of what is going to be weighted on the multiple choice exam. So if there is any kind of thing that you're going to want to study right now for multiple choice is going to be the short fiction. Apart from that, you can also expect to see poetry. And I know poetry is really hard for people. And if that is your situation as well, go ahead and ask me poetry related questions and I'm here to help you with that. Poetry on the multiple choice is going to be about 36 to 45% of what you can expect to find there. The last piece is longer fiction or drama. And so with multiple choice, that's about 15 to 18% is going to be those longer items like drama, something with Shakespeare probably, may not, but probably. And so if you're looking to see, well, of all of that, what are going to be good literary terms for you to be able to study because they're going to likely show up on the multiple choice of the exam? The first thing I'll say about that is to explain the function of a character. So that's something that you're going to need to know how to do. So with that, about 16 to 20% of the exam for the multiple choice is all going to be centered around explaining the function of a character. The other piece that I'll mention in terms of exam weighting for the multiple choice part of the exam is explaining the function of a narrator or speaker. That's about 21 to 26% of what's going to be on the multiple choice section. So in terms of a narrator, remember the literary term with that, think of point of view, the first, second, or third person perspective of being a narrator. That's something that you're going to want to be able to easily identify. First person point of view, that's going to be your eyes. The second person point of view, those are going to be the yous. And the third is like that omniscient narrator. So in addition to that, the next part that you're going to want to study is the function of plot and structure. And the reason for that is that 16 to 20% of what you're going to see in terms of those types of literary themes on the multiple choice section. Again, this is all for the multiple choice section right now. So in terms of plot and structure, just knowing where something is exposition, where there's rising action and a climax and resolution, all of those things, that's going to be important for the multiple choice part of the exam. Also, this is another big one. So 10 to 13% is going to be the function of word choice, imagery, and symbols. Literary terms, imagery. There's 5 kinds of imagery, so you're going to want to know all 5 different kinds. So you have the visual imagery, you have auditory imagery, you have olfactory imagery. So again, you have all these different kinds of imagery, so you want to know all of them. In terms of word choice, that means diction. That's all what that word means. Word choice equals diction, the specific words that an author uses. And symbols, so symbolism, what is a symbol? So that's something that you're also going to want to be able to know. Now, the other pieces, you want to be able to compare and contrast something very well. And that's going to serve you really well, both for the multiple choice part of the exam, as well as for the essay section, because the sneakiest exams in history, I at least think the sneakiest exams in history are when you get to the essay section, and for poetry, they can give you 2 short poems and ask you to compare and contrast. That's not always what they do, but it is something that they can do. So being able to know how to distinguish things that are similar and things that are different in 2 different poems are going to serve you well. And then Tucker, I see you. Yes, you are welcome. Going to be here for 1 hour in total. And also, if you're here for the prize, I'm going to be giving that a little bit later on. So all of you who are here are going to be able to have access to that. And of course, I'm being sneaky right now because I'm not saying what it is, but I am going to say I think it's pretty good. All right. So in addition to all of the multiple choice things that I just mentioned, one of the things I also want to walk you through is with short fiction, with poetry, as well as the longer forms, what are the important literary devices and what are topics they're going to be able to expect you to at least be able to recognize, if not write about. So for short fiction, the first things is you have to be able to identify the role of a character. I already mentioned that a little bit earlier, so that just is a little bit more expanded. You also have to identify and interpret setting. That's a literary device. And this is an important one because most students forget that setting is 2 things. The first is the time. The second is the location and place. You don't get partial credit here. You have to know both of those things for setting, is that it is going to be time as well as the location. So those are like a little bundle for that one literary device. So make sure you know that. Understanding how a story's structure affects things. So why is something happening in the beginning versus the end? How would it be different if it's going to be in the middle or in the very beginning part? I see a question. I'll pause right now because I see how long are the AP tests, because you are taking AP World and you're having anxiety about time. So that one, I didn't teach AP World History, but I will say most of the exams are around 3 hours, and typically you're going to have a multiple choice part, and then you're going to have a free response part. So you could think of those as either short essays. If you're really stressed, you're probably going to feel like they're long essays, but it's going to be a little bit of a combo. If you go to College Board's website though, and I can actually do that when we're all right here, and I can answer your question a lot better than I am right now. So the AP World History exam, and that is, sorry, this is not my area specialty, but I can still answer the question for you. It is going to be digital or paper, which, by the way, if you have the option, take it on paper. And the reason is because if you're on the multiple choice piece of it, you're not going to be able to go back and review your answers if you do it through a digital way. And so for just my own personal recommendation, so you can just go through quickly, answer all of the easy multiple choice questions first, and then do the harder ones. At this point in time, it looks like the only way to do that is through paper and not electronic. So that's just a side note for you in terms of the differences between the different formats. Now, your initial question, though, was not about the exam format. It was about the length of it. So section 1, and that is going to be 55 questions. That's 55 minutes to answer 55 questions for AP World History. So that is also 40% of your exam score is going to be in that part of it. The second section is going to be another 40 minutes. That's 20% of your exam score. So short answer, like I said, short little essays. And then you also have document-based questions, so DBQs, and that's going to be 1 hour and 40 minutes. So yeah, like I said, at least 3 hours, and that's going to be the length that you can expect. So don't be hungry. You need to make sure that you are well fed and watered before you take the exam, because you're not going to do as well for something like a 3 or 4 hour exam if you're hungry and thirsty. Okay, so any tips on translating Shakespeare? So yes, the first thing that I would say with Shakespeare, as well as with all types of poetry, the more you can hear, in this case, Shakespeare read aloud well, the easier it's going to be for you to be able to read and interpret it. And that's because our ability to audibly hear and understand something normally is way better than trying to read some type of language that feels a little foreign or old or antiquated, like Shakespearean English or like the Renaissance English. And so if you hear it, you're like, oh, I kind of understand it if it's read by someone who knows what they're doing. So that would be one tip that I would have, is try to get as much access as you can to Shakespeare performed or at least read out loud well, because it's ultimately going to be a lot easier and better for you when you're going to try to read it and be able to write about it. Any tips to avoid plot summary on essays? Yes. So I am also going to be making videos on this, on how to not do plot summary. The first thing that I would say, just like an easy writing hack, is if you're not sure if you're doing plot summary or not, and if you want to stop yourself if you may or may not be doing plot summary in a sentence, is you say such and such is going on because. Just add the word because when you add because, you have to answer with a how or a why. And so that's one tip to avoid plot summary. The other is you want to always be thinking not so much about describing what is happening. That is something that you can, for the most part, assume that your AP graders are relatively intelligent people. They don't need to be described what happened in a book. They need to be hearing from you on the how. How is something happening in a book or play or a poem? Why is it happening? Why is the biggest one? And the other thing that I would recommend if you're thinking about the why is connect it to a theme. So the idea of like, what's something that's anchoring the entire text as a whole? What's something that's pulling it all together? This is something that's going to serve you really well, just because plot summary, you may get a 3 and you may pass, but the rubric is not kind. And by that I mean those students who typically do plot summary only score a 2 or a 1, depending on how they do in multiple choice. So if you do a stellar job with multiple choice, but all you do is plot summary, barely a 3. So as long as, again, on those sentences you put a because this and this is happening because of this reason, or because of this. It reveals this about a character. It illustrates this concept or this idea. I'm giving you keywords that you can use right now and take notes on so that you can start memorizing some of those keywords to use to stop doing plot summary and to start doing analysis instead. The biggest tip for synthesis essays. Oh, memorization. Sorry, that one came first. For memorizing things, yes. Okay, so this is going back when I was in college. I studied classics as one of my majors, and an oratory skill for memorizing is to not just read text. Our human brains were evolved to be able to see and memorize and understand a lot more if there's visuals or a visual component to what we're learning about. It's why with all the videos that I'm doing, you'll also see me with those pieces of paper and those, even if they're super crude and elementary graphics, because you're going to memorize something and you're going to remember it a lot better if you're able to see any kind of visual. So if you're there learning about something, or if you're reading something and you're there thinking this is really hard, how can I memorize all of it? Think of all the different ways you can Google something about that particular item and just copy paste whatever that image is, or print it out, put it on a flashcard, anything you can do to help you associate the words and the concepts with an image. That's going to be really, really key for ultimately you to memorize things. Also, what I would highly recommend for memorizing stuff, especially if it's like definitions for things or whatnot, if you use something like flashcards, you always want to be able to use them consistently throughout the week. So just because on one particular day you read what, the definition of a metaphor is, later in the week, or more importantly, later under time pressure and anxiety, don't assume you're going to be able to recall it if you only read something one time. So the more reps you can get, the more times that you can have a consistent stream of whatever that one thing is, that is going to be key for you to memorize and to retain that knowledge, is because instead of learning or reading something just one time, you have seen it multiple times. You can think about it like if you see a TV show that you really like, or a movie or a YouTube video, if you see it one time versus 20 times, you're so going to remember things better if you've seen it 20 times. Now, I'm not saying watch, movies 20 times unless you really like it, when I do have some that I like that much, but I'm just saying the consistency and the repetition is going to serve you well. And also, as much as you can, put an image with any of those words that you're trying to memorize, and it'll come. And so mention that. Biggest tip for synthesis essays. So for English language, for that one, The biggest thing I would say in terms of trying to do a synthesis essay is to, one, always make sure that you, if you can, and if you're using quotes from different places and you're doing one synthesized argument and one synthesized essay, make sure that you're not mentioning one thing in only one sentence and then for something that you're more familiar with, expanding for like 5 or 6 sentences. As much as you can, you want to be able to show that you can construct an argument really well, and by doing that, that means that you have to make sure that you use as much evidence for one particular item as another particular item. And whether that is, and you can think about that, the same is true for AP Lit, by the way. So if you're there writing an essay and you spend only 1 or 2 sentences analyzing a particular literary device, and then you spend the entire rest of the essay on the other literary device, your graders are going to see that you don't have a, quote, strong command of sophisticated writing. And all of that is fancy to say that you're leaning towards favoring really only one thing that you know well, versus bringing all those little dog leashes together and saying, now we're going to have it be equitable. We're going to have all of this be brought together in one like blended way to make it just fair. So that's one biggest tip that I would have for those types of essays. Do I know anything about The Invisible Man? Yes, I did not like reading that when I was in high school. So no, before, that's not helpful to you. That's just maybe interesting or funny, but that's not helpful. With The Invisible Man, it's not one that I taught. It does show up very often on the AP English Lit exam. So if you're reading that for, or if you're considering reading it for AP Lit, where it's going to show up is the free response question number 3. So that's your open-ended question, the one where you have a prompt and a list of books to be able to use. And it'll say, if not one of these books, of equal literary merit. So that would be one of those equal literary merits if you don't see it listed. It's a very dark book. It's one where you're going to, it may come up this year actually, because Invisible Man, it's all about different types of classes of society. It's about different races and ethnicities, people who are marginalized. So if you see any prompt that's talking about things like that, it's probably going to come up. Again, it wasn't a book that I taught, but I did read it. And it was just, for me at least, it was really hard to read through because it was both a long book and it just, I felt very sad when I was reading it. And so I'm not more helpful with that one. But I can at least tell you where it's going to show up and the likely prompts that would be there if it does show up. And so let me go see some other questions. How many types of essays are you writing on the AP English Literature exam? If you mean by types of essays, you have 3 total essays. One is going to be on poetry. So sorry, but it's going to be poetry. I would always teach a lot more, and I will make videos on poetry, so you guys are going to be able to be in a better spot there because I know it's super tough. I will say with that essay, it's a very technical activity. Analyzing poetry in general is very technical, where you have to be able to scan the lines and the rhyme scheme and how many meters, I get the whole thing. A lot of it is just memorizing those lit terms of what's going to be most specific to poetry literary devices that are going to help you ultimately score well for the poetry part. So that's one essay. The second essay can either be short, like a piece of like short fiction, or a play excerpt. And so the third part is going to be that open-ended free response essay. So you're going to have 3 different types of essays, and you're going to have about 40 minutes, 40. Oh, could you imagine 4 minutes per essay? That'd be the worst. 40 minutes per essay. So it's tough. It's doable. The one thing I'll say, even though it wasn't a question you had, still related to essays, before you write a single sentence for your analysis with essays, do not do that until you take 5 minutes. And it feels like 5 minutes is super precious when you are there with only 40 to use per essay, but I promise you it's gonna be worth it. Take 5 minutes and think, what is my thesis statement? What's your claim? And what are at least 3 pieces of evidence? What are 3 moments in a book? What are 3 different examples I can use to prove this thesis? Because what's going to happen if you don't do that, you're going to be in a situation where you could likely halfway through an entire essay, let's say 20 minutes in, you realize, oh my God, I don't have anything more to say about this. And the best way that I've found, both for me as well as for my former students and those students who got 4s and 5s in the exam, is to create just that rough skeleton structure. I would call it a skeleton structure, your thesis and then 3 concrete details, because if you're not able to do that, it's going to be really challenging for you to then actually write a cohesive essay about it. So just take 5 minutes and think, okay, from this prompt, what are those keywords? What's the claim that I have? And what are those 3 pieces of evidence? What are those 3 moments in the book? Those 3 things that I can say, the 3 literary devices I'm going to analyze, and then you're going to be able to do way better, way better. Oh, and also the ways that you can get the highest scores for the essays is if you analyze more than one literary device. The only reason that you can get with each essay, they use a scoring rubric of 6. So you can get 0 to 6 total points. The only way you're able to get those 5s or 6s per essay is if you analyze at least 2 different literary devices on your essays. So just know that going into it. Okay, do you have any good sentence frames for backing up evidence on essays? So I'm not entirely sure what you mean by sentence frames. I do have a framework that I'm going to be doing later, whether it's called Writing Week or not, for my TikTok videos. But I'm going to be saying for an intro paragraph, here is the main structure you can use to do really well. For body paragraphs, here's a good structure you can use. For conclusion paragraphs, here's a good structure. It's going to be obviously with 1-minute videos, super short. And so on my website, I'll be doing a blog post that would also have the framework there. And I think that may go after the question that you're saying right now, which is any kind of good sentence frames or frameworks for backing up the evidence in the essays. What are some better words to use instead of shows or says? Illustrates. That's a really good one. Reveals. This is where thesaurus.com is going to be your best friend, because you can put shows or says in thesaurus.com and it'll give you like 20 different ones. These are ones that I'm just thinking off the top of my head right now. But I would always use illustrates, describes, it reveals. So those are 3 different ones. If I think of others, even if I'm in the middle of answering other questions, I'll go ahead and I'll let you know again what those are. Does Hamlet show up often on the AP Lit exam? Not as often as it used to. So if you're thinking of Shakespeare, probably you're going to want to read King Lear over Hamlet if it's one that you have a choice in, just because King Lear shows up more often. But it's not, again, to say that you can't use Hamlet on the open-ended free response essay, because even if you don't see it listed, you can still use it. There's nothing wrong with using Hamlet. No AP grader is going to look and say, oh, that's not of equal literary merit. No, it's Shakespeare. Anything written by Shakespeare is fine. And so to answer your question, I want to say in the last 10 or so years, it's shown up maybe 3 or 4 times. And so it's not as often as some of the others. Some of my earliest videos are those where I'm all about Gatsby, because it shows up in the last 10 years like 7 times. And so there are other books that show up more often, but it does show up with that in mind. Again, if you don't see it listed, you can still use it though. Okay. So you had your poetry unit. Hold on. Before that question, I see other ones that came in. So I'm trying to take these in order in the way that they come. Reading Invisible Man right now in it. Okay. I'm going to say I'm sorry just because I didn't like it. Maybe I'm a bad teacher by telling you I don't like a book. I'm just being real right now because I didn't like it. What should you keep in mind to earn the sophistication point? That's there for Lang as well as Lit. For the sophistication point, actually, I'm going to pull up. I have notes on that for you right now, because this is like a sneak preview. I'm going to be making a TikTok video about it. I don't have like a full thing developed yet, but I was having ideas like 2 or so weeks ago, so I was taking notes. So right now I'm going to pull up, even though it's not a video, we're going to be totally fine with that. And I'm going to say sophistication. There we go. Okay, so this is how you can do it. And this, by the way, is straight from the rubric of what they're going to be looking for to decide if what you're saying is sophisticated or not, which, come on, who's going to be able to tell? Apparently they can. Okay, so 1 point for sophistication. demonstrates sophistication of thought and or develops a complex literary argument. So a big idea, not an easy idea, but a big idea. Responses that earn this point may demonstrate it by having, this idea. Okay, 4 things. This is how you do it. And by the way, they're sneaky. If you miss any 4 of these things, you don't get the point. So this is very much a checklist right now. Identifying and exploring complexities or tensions within the text. So this is one of those things where if you begin a sentence to say such and such is the case, however, you can also view it this particular way. That's showing a level of sophistication because you're not only seeing one possible interpretation, but you're showing 2 different kinds of interpretation. So it can be this and it can also be this. That is what they mean for that bullet point. So that's 1 of 4. The second, illuminating the student's interpretation by situating it within the broader context. All that to say, if you can connect whatever that idea is to a broader picture, as in the theme, that is also going to get you the point. Now there's 2 other things, or that was 2 of 4 for the sophistication point. I already feel you're like, are you kidding me? I have to do all this just for 1 point? Yes, you do. Accounting for alternative interpretations of the text. So things like I was saying that with the first point, so exploring complexities such as accounting for alternative ideas or interpretations. So that is bundled together. The 4th is employing a style that is consistently vivid and persuasive. Okay. All that means is that you have to be able to really persuade them using great language or great diction, great word choice. So it also means when they talk about consistently vivid, that's code for writing in the present indicative active, no passive voice. No, this used to be, it was. It was is the past tense and it's nice and strong. It was. It has been, has, and then the been, that is passive voice. So you can look to see what other examples are there, but if you stay in that present tense or that strong past tense, you do not use the passive voice. That is what you can do to be able to get that sophistication point. Okay, so answered that question. Yes, last year there was only 1 essay. Now they're going back to full-on punishment. So we are not lucky this year. Could I do a series with Invisible Man like I did with Gatsby? I can at least do 1. Since I didn't teach it, I don't know it nearly as well as Gatsby. Some of the books that I can do more detail on, Great Expectations. Again, I didn't like it in high school. I loved it later on in my life. So I try to take some of that love and infuse it so my students would actually like it. Frankenstein, I can do videos on Frankenstein. I can really help you out there. Ooh, it got covered. There you go. Because Mary Shelley's just a freaking lady boss. She's awesome. And then Scarlet Letter. So I can do, look at that. Lit terms. That's specific to Gatsby. But if you wanted, by the way, no lit terms to use for the Scarlet Letter, check it out right there. I still have all the notes right there. So I can do more videos on things like Scarlet Letter and The Great Gatsby. They're over there. So I can at least do 1 for Invisible Man and try to make it like the greatest hits album and like pack it all in there for you. Okay, you had your poetry unit. And yeah, the thing with poetry is if you don't have a good teacher, it's just rough. And so for that reason, I'm absolutely going to go ahead and do more of the videos to make it so that you can be in a really good spot with poetry. Because again, if you don't have a teacher who's going to be able to just read a poem in a good way, it's going to be way more confusing to understand the poem. If you guys think it'd be valuable for me to just make videos where I'm just reading poetry or YouTube videos where I'm not necessarily interpreting, but I'm just reading, I can do that too. Just let me know. But again, I'll also make sure to give you some information with poetry on literary devices that are going to show up way more often with poetry. Alliteration. That's a big one. So make sure that you know more about things like alliteration, enjambment, like all of those terms that you wouldn't necessarily have for books. You're going to need for poetry. And again, I'll be making videos on some of those, like the top poetry lit terms to be able to recognize and stuff. So you don't have to worry, at least that I got you there. I've got you there. Let's see. Other things. Oh, yes, Frankenstein. Oh, I froze. Hold on. I hope I'm not frozen still because that's not good. That's especially when I'm like anti-Elsa in one of my videos, or at least it looks that way, even though it was just saying don't go into the unknown. Any tips on the multiple choice section? Yes. So I'm going to be doing a lot more videos on the multiple choice section, just because I want to make sure that you have both essay writing tips as well as poetry, or not poetry, sorry, multiple choice tips. If you're taking in, and it's a paper exam, the tips are going to be different for you with multiple choice than if it's digital only, because the biggest tip that I have with multiple choice is to be able to skim it, like take 1 minute and just skim it all before you have to answer it, and then go back and answer for each of those passages where you give a passage and then you have to answer like 10 questions about a passage. You get another passage, answer like 5 questions for it. You want to be able to try to isolate those in multiple choice to say, okay, here's a passage of content, here's 10 questions. Of these 10, which is the easiest that I can answer first? Boom, boom, boom. And then do the ones that take longer time. You're not able to do that if it's going to be digital. I'll also say with multiple choice, there are 5 different formats for multiple choice questions. I have a blog article that I just wrote like last week that's on my website, which is www.learnxrapp.com, and it is all on multiple choice. So there's, like I said, if you can memorize or at least be able to see the different types of formats you're likely to get from multiple choice questions, it's going to be a lot easier to answer them, just because you're going to go, oh, it's that kind of a question. This is what I need to do. Really quickly, I'll go ahead on my website right now and I'll go to the blog and I'll give you what those 5 different format types are. So make sure you can take notes right now on that. The first is a straightforward question. What do I mean by straightforward question? The poem is an example of A, B, C, or D, or E. So that you could say, oh, that's Petrarch and sonnet. That is a straightforward question. Is the first one. The second is a specific line question. So this is where they give you a specific line to reference. So it'll refer you to lines and ask you to draw a conclusion or to interpret. So it'll be something like lines 12 through 16 serve to do these things, A, B, C, D, or E. A third question type is the all except questions. So that, this is why if you can take it over in paper, I recommend it, because those are the time crunchers. Those are the ones that take you the longest time. And the reason is because you can't immediately spot the answer and say, that's right, now I can move on. It forces you to read all 5 different multiple choice answers for the question, for the all except question. So for that one, again, it requires you to consider every possible answer and not just spot the right ones immediately. An example is something like in John Donne's poem, The Bait, line 8 contains all of the following except. It's all of this except for this. So then you have to see, well, what is it all instead of this? So that's why it takes longer. The inference question, so that asks you to make an inference that's not explicitly stated in the passage. So for example, in William Blake's poem, London, the reader can infer that the speaker is, they're not gonna in the poem tell you what the speaker is. This is where you have to be able to do literary term analysis. This is where you have to analyze and be able to go, I can infer that this is the right thing based upon my understanding of it. And then the last one, which I'm not sure if it's still a question type, just because in the last year it got a little different with COVID, but there used to be Roman numeral questions. So that was also one that took a lot of time, where they would say, in this particular situation, it refers to Roman numeral 1, 2, or 3. And then the answers, they would do a combo and say, oh, the real answer is saying it's this and this. So again, they may not have it, so I wouldn't stress too much about it, but the other 4 are completely fair game. If you take the AP Lit exam in person, will they allow you to type your essays? I don't think so. I think you have to handwrite the essays. I could be wrong with that, but I think they are treating it just like one of the old school paper exams, where you have to be able to write, and to write not on a computer, but to handwrite the stuff. And the exception to that is if you're doing it digital, where then you will be able to type, because everything's going to have to be typed. Please do Frankenstein, Jane Eyre. Yes, I taught Jane Eyre. I can do videos on Jane Eyre if you think that would be helpful. The best literary term, by the way, for both Jane Eyre as well as for Great Expectations is Billings Done Roman. There's a big SAT word for you. But all that means is that you're following one character throughout their entire life. So you're starting to see them when they're a little kid and they're adolescents, and then when they're, like a young, in this case, woman or a young man. That's a Billings Dunn-Roman. And it's a popular thing to be able to know, just because the AP exam is also going to make sure that you can do something like talk about how a character is different when they're young versus when they're older. And the way that you're going to be able to see that time pass better than any other way is if it's a Billings enrollment, if you have just lots and lots of pages of one character. Okay. Is taking practice tests online helpful? One or online? Oh, interesting. I'll just say in general, taking practice tests 100% is helpful. If you take them online, if you know you're going to have the digital version for the test, that's going to be way more helpful. What I would say and recommend is, as much as you can, try to simulate the testing experience with how you are practicing and how you're studying. What do I mean by that? If you have an 8 a.m. exam, when you do your practice exams when you're at home, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to wake up early and do it at 8 o'clock in the morning, because you want as much as you can to simulate that exact moment of time when you're going to be doing it for real. So if you're not an early morning person, and when you're doing all these practice exams, if it's later in the afternoon, but your test is in the morning, it's not going to help you as much, just because it's not going to be in the time of day that your exam is. So, and I will say, just as a blanket response to your question, any kind of practice exam, whether you're going to do it online or not, is going to help you, and you're going to score better because of it. Because the more you can familiarize yourself with the questions and the question types and do the full end-to-end multiple choice and essays, like the full experience, even if it's 3 or 4 hours that you're not going to get it in your life back, it'll pay dividends. It'll be a really good thing. Okay. Awesome. I'm glad that you think my stuff is funny. That's good, because the alternative would be really like the worst. Let's see. Have I ever talked about my educational background in a TikTok, specifically at Oxford? Oh wait, hold on. I'm sorry. I'm going to answer that question, but I'm also seeing there were earlier questions, and I want to make sure I can get to them. And I want to, as much as I can, do in the order that you all gave these questions to me. What do I suggest, or if you don't understand the poem? That's a good one. The first thing that I would do is, at that point, if you're not understanding, you're probably going to be freaking out. And the first thing you want to do is to not be in that situation, which means, what do you know? And by that, I mean, find one word in that poem and say, I know that word. I know what it means. I know the dictionary definition. That's the denotation. That's a lit term, by the way. Then you can think, well, do I know the connotations? Is it a positive or negative word? Oh, I know that too. The more you can just reconstruct the narrative that you're going to have in your head of, oh my God, I don't know anything. You absolutely, I promise you, you know something. And with the puzzle, I call it a puzzle. With the poem, they're just a puzzle. You're just going to have to look to see, well, what do I know? Just like each of those things are puzzle pieces, and you're going to realize the more you string those together, and the more that you get your brain in a, oh my God, I do know some things space, and not a, oh my God, I don't know anything space, and you change the narrative in your head, it will come into place a little bit better for you. You're going to go, oh, now I understand it. And in part, the reason why you're in that space of now I understand it is because you're not freaking out anymore. And so again, it would just be that brick by brick, one step at a time, just being able to look at a poem and say, what's one thing I can do? One thing that I would always encourage my students to do with the poetry, if you think that you don't understand it, is with poetry, it's a very technical activity, as I mentioned, and start seeing, is it stress or unstressed? Start scanning the lines. If you're not sure on that, look at the very end of the lines to see, do these words rhyme? Yes, no, yes. And do the scansion again of the meters to say A, A, B, A, A, B. And then you realize, oh, now I understand, it's this kind of a poem. So the more that you can give yourself the ability to just get like those little breadcrumb trails, the better it's going to be for you. Because again, the more you can say that you know some things, and the more you can like piece it all together, the easier it's going to be for you. Okay. How many essays a week should you write to get a 4 or a 5? It's not really the amount of essays, it's knowing if you're able to write better and better every week. Because you could be making the same mistakes. If you write 10 essays a week and you're making the same mistake, that's not going to help you get a 4 or 5. The one thing that will help is do it under time pressure. So that's one thing I can do if I'm not able to actually read through all of your essays to be able to see, oh, you are getting better. Here's some feedback and here's some edits. At least at a minimum, give yourself at least, I'll say 2 essays a week, and all you're doing is saying you have 40 minutes only to write. And when you're doing that, this is going to be like a really ugly demonstration right now, but I'm hoping it'll give you the point, which is as you're writing and you're doing the test version of it, and it's 20 minutes in, halfway through. This, let's say, is how far you've been able to go through in those 20 minutes. Take a highlighter and just highlight where you've gotten and then keep writing. The reason why you're doing this, by the way, is because you're going to see measurable progress between all of your essays that you're doing under that time constraint. And normally with essays, students are freaking out over, oh, well, if I had 3 days, I could actually put something that's thoughtful together. Graders, they don't care about that. This is a very different situation. This is an exam, and it's an unfair one in part, which is why I'm here trying to help as much as I can, because I don't like it. But all of that to say is the more you're going to be able to see, oh, well, in the first essay that you did in the week, you only have 2 sentences done after 20 minutes. It doesn't matter. And the reason is if you do multiple essays and you keep putting yourself under practice conditions where it's not the real exam and do it 20 minutes mark, 20-minute mark, I can promise you that as you keep writing, doing it under time pressure, you're going to at least be able to have a complete essay and be well prepared under the time constraints you're given. So that would be how I would answer your question in terms of how many a week to be able, not necessarily to get a 4 or 5, but to get way closer to a 4 or a 5. That is one thing. Tips for pacing on AP Lang multiple choice. Yep, so you're going to want about 1 minute per question for multiple choice. And that's true for AP Language and for AP Lit. So if you have a watch or you have a phone, use the timer feature and just look at that to be able to see, okay, when I do a practice multiple choice, am I spending too long on one question? And just know then, that if you spend 10 seconds on one question, you then like bought yourself an additional 50 seconds for another question. So for me, what I found helpful both doing the multiple choice and for my students is if you have around 50 or 60 questions and you know you have about 50 or 60 minutes for multiple choice, just think 10 questions, 10 minutes. So you could look at least and chunk it out 10, 10, 10 and do it that way to be able to just get a sense of pacing to say in the last 10 minutes, I only answered 3 questions. I need to pick it up. I need to go a little bit faster. Or, oh, I'm ahead of schedule. Now I can slow down if I need to. So those are a few different multiple choice pacing tips. And Jane Eyre is great. Yeah, it is. That's right. All right. Tips for time management during the essay portion. Oh, okay. Yes. So I just answered that question. So the more that you can practice before the exam under that time pressure, the better off you're going to be in a way. And I will have a video on this too, by the way, of what I was talking about with the marking your essay every 20 minutes when you write an essay. Very quickly, again, in case you arrived a little bit later, it's let's say that you're there writing, because you only know you have 40 minutes per essay. When you get to 20 minutes, and this is your writing, put a little highlighter mark and keep writing so that you're going to be able to visually see the more times you practice how much faster you're getting when you have a timed essay to do. It sounds a little weird, but I promise it worked with my students, and we had, I prepared them throughout the entire year that way, but even now you still have enough time to do 1 essay a week, 2 essays a week, and be able to get comfortable of writing under pressure. Then the original question that I went to and then I jumped back from, which is, have I ever talked about my educational background in a TikTok specifically at Oxford? My very first one, I mentioned that I went to Oxford. I don't mind doing that. I just don't think it's going to help for the AP exam. And so I feel a little scared to post things that are not going to be directly helpful or applicable to the AP exam because I don't want to waste your guys' time. Maybe that says more about my own insecurities than anything. I will say, at least at Oxford, in a way, it's like Harry Potter. They filmed part of it there. The professors have it's a very different environment with the professors because you have tutorials and not lectures or classes. You can go to lectures with other students, but the only goal of going to those lectures is to help you write your essays every single week. And you write your essays every week for what they call tutorials, where you talk one-on-one with your professor, maybe a small group of like one other student with you, and you are expected to have 2 tutorials per term. So 2 classes per term. And then you, after that point, every week you are writing at least 1 essay per tutorial. So you're writing like 2 essays a week. Each essay is like 10 to 15 pages. I had to get very good at reading fastly, knowing how to get to the gist of something, knowing how to write well, how to write quickly. So that's a little bit about my time at Oxford. I'm happy to answer more. Ooh, sorry, I just like kicked myself there. I'm happy to answer more about that. I just also want to make sure that I'm going to be as helpful as I can to you all when you're taking your exam. What I will say, not directly related to your question, but maybe tangentially about non-AP English stuff, I do want to take the summer to do things like go through a whole book and do videos on a whole book so that if you're following over the summer and if you may or may not have a great teacher the next year, you at least are going to have one book you can use for your AP exams. I also worked in admissions at the University of Chicago, so I know what admissions officers are looking for applications. And I would love to do videos on that as well, especially in summer where some of you may be beginning your senior year and you had to do college applications. The lessons you get, by the way, in AP Language and Lit, you're not trying to do really well just to do a really great high level 4 or 5 exam score. You want to get better at writing because every single job you have, you're going to have to write something, even if it's an email. For admissions, you're going to have to write essays and say why you should be chosen and not some other student. That's your rhetorical essay right there for AP Language. So again, it all comes back together. Any tips for connecting lit terms to the meaning of the poem? So there's a lot I can say about that. and the reason why I'm pausing is because it really depends on what the prompt wants you to do. If you talk about diction, but the prompt is specifically saying talk about imagery, it's not what the prompt is asking, so it doesn't matter if it's about a poem or a play or a book. The golden rule, number 1 rule, is you have to answer all parts of the prompt. Now, if I can go ahead, doorbell, I'm not getting that right now. I'm here with you guys. All right, which is, let me go back. Oh, I see additional questions. Poem essays, sorry, any tips for connecting, there's the question, for connecting those lit terms to the meaning of the poem. So I think the first thing is you have to both identify the term and the meaning is think, what's the topic? What's the main word that jumps out to you in terms of what is this poem is about? Is the gist about love? Is it about anger? Is it about whatever that emotion is or the idea? And then create an understanding of that idea of what's the perspective of love for this particular author? Is it positive or negative? So you're able to ultimately connect it to the theme. And so any lit term can be connected to that bigger idea. I will have, the reason why I'm being a little mysterious with this question is because part of the giveaway that I'm going to give to all of you for being in the live stream is related to that question. So you're going to be able to understand that a lot more later. I see some other questions. I know we have 9 minutes left. And so I will say you will get taken care of with what I'm going to be giving you all very shortly now. Okay, I'm not frozen. Awesome. Do I have any tips for multiple choice with poems? I gave some multiple choice tips earlier, and so that is going to be for the most part the same, as well as if it's going to be for a play or for like a short work of fiction. The one thing I'll say in terms of tips with multiple choice and poems, memorize and know what are good poetry literary devices. And I will be making a TikTok video on that for you. But if anything, that's where you would get frozen and be like, oh my gosh, I don't know whether it's the multiple choice or the essay section, is if you can't recognize a poetry literary device. And so I'm going to go ahead and do videos of that for all of you. How do I write poem, essays, structure-wise? The structure for poetry is going to be the same for prose as well as for the long list of books that you get to write in the free response open-ended essay. So what do I mean by it's going to be the same? If you see a poem, you're going to see what are the total number of lines. This is also true for if you get a play or a short piece of fiction for those essays. So what I'm saying is gold for both of those. You see your poem, it's 40 lines, 40, right? Just as an example. Divide it by 3. So you're gonna have roughly 12 lines, 12 lines, and 12 lines. Divide into thirds. As you look at it, go, what is one thing this prompt is wanting me to do that I can say in this first third? Circle those keywords, look for literary devices, start identifying them and see, are these devices what the prompt is asking you to also write about? And do that for the second third and the last third. And what you just done is made it possible for you to talk about multiple literary devices in the beginning, middle, and end of the poem, which is body paragraph 1, 2, and 3. First third of the poem is going to be first body paragraph. Second third of the poem is second body paragraph. Last third of the poem is last body paragraph. And if you're doing one literary device in the beginning, middle, and end, you're now talking about 3 literary devices, not just one. And that's important because that's the only way you can get a 4 or a 5 is if you talk at least about 2 different literary devices in your essays. So by automatically framing the content that way, you're going to do it. All right, man, that was good. Sorry, I'm just like, man, I wish I would have had that knowledge when I was having to do this. I didn't have, well, my teacher was okay, but okay, sorry, that was not humility. Should we focus on meaning and literary devices? Yes. You want to focus both on the substance, the meaning, and on lit devices because you're going to have to both be able to identify lit devices and you're also going to have to be able to generate meaning from them because on multiple choice, you have to infer what that meaning is and choose the right answer. You also then have to analyze and actually write about what the right answer is for the essay. So you want to do both. How important is doing structure analysis on the essay portion? Not sure if you mean language or on lit. Structure analysis is not something that is there for AP literature. And so I'm not going to be as helpful if it's for something like AP language on that. Unless you're talking about like the structure of the content itself, like, oh, this is the exposition and like the structure of the poem, or in that case, if it's going to be like a narrative structure, that is important to be able to say, this is exposition, rising action, this is a climax, the climactic moment, and then falling action or conclusion. So knowing the actual structure like that is going to be important. I already said that one. Tips for the multiple choice on AP Lit exam. Some of the answers are similar. Yes, so I was talking about AP Lit and the multiple choice exam earlier. So what you want to do, because I both already covered it and I also have it detailed on my blog on my website, is go there. Website address is www.learnxrapp.com, and if you go to blog, it's all these multiple choice tips are all there. And do admissions look at AP exam scores? Do they care about them, or is it more how you do in class? Yes and yes. Admissions 100% will look at the exam scores. They do care about them because if they're going to have to choose to be able to see, okay, you're a really great student, someone else is a really great student, they're going to be looking for ways to have you be distinguished over another student, to be able to say this is what matters for them. But honestly, like the essays you do for admissions, as well as the letter of recommendations you get and who's doing those letter of recommendations, I don't want to say it's way more important, but it's kind of way more important. And the reason is because if for whatever reason you get a 3, or if you get a 2, if it's not the score that you wanted it to be, your teacher, especially if they're the ones who taught that subject and give you a great letter of recommendation, they can explicitly say, listen, I know this student necessarily didn't get a high AP exam score, but let me tell you all the reasons why you should choose them. That's way more powerful when you're in missions than just seeing, oh, it's someone with all 5s. Like, you want like something like that to really make, if you don't get a great exam score, you have a great person to write you a letter of recommendation to say why you're going to be a really great choice for that college. I'm seeing a lot of questions coming in right now. Okay, what should you expect from honors English? I don't know what you should expect for your honors English. I can tell you when I taught honors English, I treated them like I would my AP students, as in I gave them books that they were likely going to see on the AP exam. I had some liberties where I wanted to have it be much more of like world literature, so it wasn't like the title AP English, like you're seeing English authors and American authors. That is not a lot of variety and diversity, so I like to be able to use my honors literature class to be able to read Don Quixote. And you're going to be reading, I did Asian literature, and I had a whole poem, like just like a whole unit of like haikus with Matsu Basho. Like, I made it to be much more of a diverse class, almost like a world literature series. Having considered that, I think what also you should be able to expect for honors English is that your teachers should prepare you to be able to write under pressure, as in like you only have a certain amount of time to learn how to do timed essays, and they should be able to teach you that fundamentals of literary term analysis. You get really great with AP English Lit when you're at that level, just because you've been exposed to a lot more books, you're writing and hopefully a lot more with things like poetry, and are able to have a way more sophisticated way of writing, because ideally in honors your teacher is giving you lots of great feedback. Some of these may not be the case, and if that's the case for you, I'm sorry that you're not there with like that like awesome stellar teacher, but you can at least expect that it should basically be a prep for AP level, whether that's language or lit. Focuses on lines, the rhyme, and the scheme. That's good, because those are all important things for something like poetry. And then be interested, okay, to share my past. Oh, thank you that you'd be interested to hear about my past experiences. And I'm sure all my 18,000 students, that would be cool. I would love to talk about Oxford. Actually, that may actually be a really cool summer thing, is to talk about the experience of what it was like at all 3 of my universities. Technically, I went to 4, but I transferred out of Chapman University and went to Wesleyan instead. There's a lot of really cool things to know before you go off to college when you're still in high school, whether it's how to be able to, by all means, make sure all of your social media is clean before you apply. You will get rejected from the really competitive colleges if they go to your social media, which they will, I can promise you, because they do not want a scandal at their university. And so that's one thing that you can make sure you do. And then, oh, thank you. I'm really glad. So you're finding my content helpful, even if you're not an AP student. That's really cool. You're gonna make me cry. Like, I like doing this for you guys. You're very welcome. And how can you improve? Last question, because now it is 4 o'clock. I'm going to give something away to all of you. How can you improve reading quickly and effectively before the AP Lit test? So I have some videos on that already. One of the things you can do is, if you're reading a book that you didn't really like, right? So let's say that you're reading Scarlet Letter right here, and you're reading, one thing you can do, underline, engage with the text. Ideally, if you underline, put your opinion there. Even if you say, this is awful and I want this author to die. Chances are they're already dead, by the way, if it's going to be an AP Lit or a Lang book. It doesn't matter what you say. Well, okay, it does. It's going to be way more helpful if you're like, oh, this is this literary device. But at a minimum, if you're bored, just engaging with the text and having the emotion is going to help you do better with reading effectively, just because you're going to remember the content better. If you are emotionally excited or angered about something, ideally in a state of excitement. So the more you can be like, this is awesome, this is good, the better off you're going to be. Also, Debussy music, Dubussy. So he is a composer who does a really great job. You hear about things like the Mozart effect, like, oh, if you listen to Mozart music in the background and you study and you learn better. The mechanical nature of Mozart is not as good as Debussy because ultimately you want your brain to be in an alpha wavelength state, which is ultimately the state when you're able to remember things better. And Debussy music and having it be super lyrical like that is proven to be way better at getting you to both read and remember things better. So listen to Debussy. If you're bored with a paragraph, or even if you're not sure if you remember what you just read, by the time you get to the end of the paragraph, ask yourself, what did I just read? If you can't answer that question, reread the entire paragraph, not the last sentence, the entire paragraph. By doing that to yourself a few times, you're going to be way more incentivized to be able to think, okay, I have to make sure to remember. How do you remember? Underline and write a note. It could be whatever you want it to be. Ideally, it's your opinion on the text of what it's about. The more you can engage with the text, the more effective you're going to be, when you read the text. And then it's also going to help you read more quickly because you're not going to have to ultimately go back and reread half of a book because you were bored the entire time and you didn't stop yourself midway after a paragraph to check yourself to see, oh, hold on a second, am I setting myself up for success or failure right now? So now, if you were here and you were like, oh my gosh, you spoken for an entire hour and didn't give out the prize, this is your chance now. So as you know, or maybe you don't know, if not, I'm going to tell you right now, I have a 45-minute course on literary term analysis. This is on Udemy. Normally this course is $24.99. You all are going to get it for free right now. And so what is lit term analysis? That is what you need to do for multiple choice as well as the essays for both your AP language and your literature tests. If you are in college or if you're in honors, you still have to be able to do literary term analysis because doing that is what ultimately is going to set you up from honors to your AP courses. So where do you go to get this course for free? This is the promo code. On my bio, I have a bit.ly link that is going to take you to the course. And here's the important part. This is the promo code right here. 3-day offer. All capitals using the number 3, DAYOFFER. Use that promo code after you click on my bio on Udemy because right here, it's only good for 3 days. So the reason I'm able to give it away for free, according to Udemy, right here with the promo code, is to say, sure, normally it costs money. You can give it to as many people as you want for free, but only for 3 days. So as long as you don't have to finish the course in those 3 days, by the way, even though it's only 45 minutes in length, as long as you go there to redeem that promo code within 3 days of today, and I have the exact date and time right here. So by April 21st, at 11:38 a.m., because that is exactly when I created this promo code, you're going to be able to get it for free. So again, instead of having to pay $25 or asking your parents for $25, you're going to be able to go ahead and get all of it. And that framework, by the way, someone had a question of poetry earlier, and what's the framework to use when you're trying to connect a lit term to a poem? I used poetry in that Udemy course because I knew it's the hardest thing for students to be able to analyze. It's inverted. Oh my God. Okay. It's the number 3-day offer. 3-day offer. Can I type? Sorry, I'm not, there we go. No, those are effects. Effects are not going to help me. Is there a way that I can type when I'm live right now? Because if so, that's what I would want to do. I see flip camera, comment. Ooh, there we go. So I'm going to type right now. I'm going to say 3-day and then offer. Oh, someone else is doing it. You guys are awesome. I'm like, hold on. This is the camera. Let me figure this out. You guys are fabulous. Boom. There we go. I just wanted to get in it on it too. So 3-day offer, power of a group, power of a crowd. And again, expires in 3 days. No, you don't have to finish it in those 3 days. You just have to download it in those 3 days. If you don't have a Udemy account, it's super easy to set up and it's free. No point are you going to have to give money, is the short version of this. So thank you all so much for tuning in. I will do at least one more office hours before your AP exams. And so you can come with questions at that point. I have a lot of great videos right now that I posted this last week on TikTok. So a lot of the different things that you guys were asking about, I have videos that I've already done, like with multiple choice stuff. I'm going to do more of essays later on at the end point of this week. I'm also, for everyone else who wasn't here, I feel free, by the way, if you have friends and they weren't at the live stream, give them this code too. Like, I don't mind. So give it to as many people as you want. And I'm going to be doing videos on essays, multiple choice, like the whole thing, poetry. So stay tuned. I'm looking at my calendar right now to make sure I have content on all possible stuff that's really going to help you the most. And each day of the calendar, I'm like writing notes to say, oh, this video should be here for this reason and this and that. So I'm going to be doing as much as I can to at least have one video a day for you guys. And again, there's a lot that I have already that you're going to be able to go and refer back to. Save the videos from TikTok. On the website. I'm going to be doing at least once a week a blog article, just so that if there's something that is a lot of content and is harder to do in a 1-minute form, I'll do that. For people who are joining in right now, I'm closing the office hours. So if you have questions, feel free to use comments for any of my videos and ask me questions, and I'll do my best to answer all of them there. And then also, if you are just tuning in right now, I'm going to say I have a 3-day offer for my my Udemy course that I have that normally is $25. You get it for free. All you have to do is click on the bit.ly link that's in my profile, that's in my bio, and then go ahead and use a 3-day offer, and that's the promo code 3-day offer. So have a really good one, you guys, and I'll be seeing you soon. Definitely will be posting a video tomorrow. So take care. Bye.